no matter what happens. I am getting married!
Hey there! Grab yourself a coffee and enjoy the story. Sophia Hayes stood in front of her bedroom mirror, her slender fingers trembling as she adjusted the delicate lace veil over her chestnut brown hair. At 27, she possessed a quiet beauty, warm hazel eyes that crinkled when she smiled, a sprinkle of freckles across her nose that she'd once tried desperately to hide, and a graceful frame that carried itself with newfound confidence. Today should have been the happiest day of her life. The ivory wedding dress she wore had been carefully selected from a modest boutique, not the luxury salon her mother had insisted upon. Sophia worked as a kindergarten teacher at Greenfield Elementary, a job that barely covered her bills but filled her heart with purpose every day. She lived in a small apartment downtown, having moved out of her parents' sprawling suburban mansion 3 years ago, a decision that had caused the first major rift with her mother, Victoria Hayes. The Hayes family was old money. Victoria's father had built a real estate empire, and Victoria had married Robert Hayes, a successful investment banker, further cementing their status among the city's elite. Sophia had grown up wanting for nothing material, but often lacking the emotional warmth that no amount of money could buy. "Soph, are you ready, sweetie?" Her grandfather George knocked gently on the bedroom door. At 82, he remained her strongest ally in the family, his kind eyes always seeing through the pretense that often surrounded their lives. "Almost, Grandpa," Sophia replied, taking one last look at herself. She'd purposely gotten ready at her parents' house as an olive branch, hoping her mother would finally accept her choice of husband. Grandpa George entered the room, his eyes immediately welling with tears. "You look just like your grandmother on our wedding day," he whispered. She would have been so proud. Sophia smiled, remembering the stories of her grandmother's rebellious spirit that seemed to have skipped a generation before landing squarely on her shoulders. "Do you think Mom will come around once she sees us at the church?" she asked, hope still flickering despite everything. George's expression clouded slightly. "Victoria is complicated, Soph. She wants what she thinks is best for you." What Victoria thought was best certainly wasn't Michael Reeves, the kind-hearted carpenter Sophia had fallen in love with 2 years ago. Michael had come to fix the bookshelves at her kindergarten class, staying late to carve little animal figures for her students. His hands were calloused from honest work, his clothes never designer, and his bank account modest, all unforgivable sins in Victoria's eyes. Outside the bedroom, Sophia could hear her mother's voice growing louder on a phone call. "I don't care what the florist says. Those arrangements cost a fortune, and they'd better be perfect." Sophia sighed. Her mother had insisted on paying for certain aspects of the wedding, only to use it as leverage to try to control everything. Sophia and Michael had wanted a simple ceremony in the local park, but Victoria wouldn't hear of it. "A Hayes doesn't get married like some hippie," she'd declared. "Maybe I should go talk to her again," Sophia said, smoothing down her dress. "The ceremony is in 2 hours, and we need to leave soon." Before Grandpa George could respond, the bedroom door burst open. Victoria Hayes stood in the doorway, her perfectly highlighted blonde hair swept into an immaculate updo, her designer dress impeccably tailored to her slim figure. At 55, she still looked 40 thanks to the best skincare and subtle cosmetic procedures money could buy. "Mother, Sophia started, but fell silent at the storm brewing in Victoria's eyes. "I just got off the phone with Caroline Winters," Victoria said, her voice dangerously calm. "Do you know what she told me? That carpenter of yours was seen leaving Stella's diner with his arm around some redhead yesterday. They looked very cozy, according to Caroline." Sophia's heart sank. Caroline Winters was her mother's most gossipy friend, always eager to spread rumors. That must have been his sister Rebecca. She flew in from Portland yesterday, and they went to lunch. "I couldn't join them, because I had my final dress fitting." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Convenient excuse. This is exactly why I've been telling you he's not good enough. Men like that will never be faithful. They always have wandering eyes, especially when they find someone with money. From downstairs, Sophia's phone chimed with a text message. That's probably Michael wondering why I haven't answered his morning message yet, she said, moving toward the door. I need to go get my phone. Victoria stepped into the room, blocking her path. Sophia Christine Hayes, I am not finished. You need to think very carefully about what you're doing today. It's not too late to call this off. People will gossip for a week, but they'll forget. Marrying beneath your station? They'll never let you forget that mistake. Sophia felt a familiar knot of frustration forming in her throat. Behind Victoria, Grandpa George shook his head slightly, a silent plea for Sophia to keep her temper. Michael is a good man, Mother, Sophia said quietly, counting to 10 in her head. He works hard, he's kind, and most importantly, he loves me for who I am, not for my family name or bank account. Victoria's perfectly painted lips curved into a cold smile. Love doesn't pay bills, darling. And when he leaves you, which he will, you'll come crawling back, and I'll have to pick up the pieces. Again. I'll continue with Chapter 2, introducing the initial conflict. I'm going downstairs to get my phone, Sophia insisted, trying to move past her mother. Victoria's manicured hand shot out, gripping Sophia's arm. We're not done discussing this. There's nothing to discuss. I'm marrying Michael today. Sophia pulled away, the delicate beading on her sleeve catching on her mother's bracelet. Sophia, please, listen to reason, Victoria pleaded, her voice softening into the persuasive tone Sophia knew all too well. I only want what's best for you. James Whitmore called again yesterday. His son is still very interested in meeting you. He's just made partner at his father's firm and… I don't care about James Whitmore's son. Sophia's patience snapped. I love Michael. Why can't you understand that? Victoria's expression hardened. Love? You think that's enough? Your father and I had a suitable match. We built something together. You built a marriage without love, Sophia countered, immediately regretting her words as hurt flashed across her mother's face. Grandpa George cleared his throat. Victoria, perhaps we should all take a moment to… Dad, please stay out of this, Victoria cut him off. You've always encouraged her rebellious streak, and look where it's gotten us. The buzzing of a phone interrupted them, this time from Victoria's purse. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It's Caroline again. I need to take this. She stepped into the hallway, closing the door firmly behind her. Sophia exhaled slowly, sinking onto the edge of her bed. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I shouldn't have said that about her marriage. Grandpa George sat beside her, patting her hand. Your mother and father, they had their own kind of partnership. Not everyone finds true love, Soph. I have, Sophia said softly. Michael is everything to me. He doesn't care about status or what country club we belong to. He sees me. The old man smiled. I know, sweetheart. I see how he looks at you. Reminds me of how I looked at your grandmother. A knock on the door interrupted them. It was Sandra, their longtime housekeeper, slipping in with Sophia's phone. Your mother's on a call in the study, she whispered. Thought you might want this. Thank you, Sandra. Sophia took the phone gratefully. 3 missed calls from Michael and a text. Good morning, beautiful. Just checking in. Can't wait to see you walking down that aisle. Love you more than words. Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she typed back, Mom's being difficult. Nothing new. We'll be there soon. Love you too. Grandpa George glanced at his watch. We should leave in 30 minutes to make it to the church on time. The door swung open again, and Victoria reappeared, her face flushed with anger. That was Caroline again. Apparently, your carpenter didn't just have lunch with his sister. They were seen checking into the Harbor View Hotel afterwards. Sophia stood up, clutching her phone. That's ridiculous. Michael wouldn't. Caroline's nephew works at the reception desk, Victoria continued. He confirmed it. Room 312, under the name Reeves. His sister's staying there. Michael helped her check in because her flight was delayed, and she was exhausted. Sophia explained, frustration mounting. "Why are you doing this? Why can't you just be happy for me?" Victoria approached, taking Sophia's hands in hers. "Darling, I'm trying to protect you. Men like him see women like you as a meal ticket. Do you really think he loves you? Or does he love the idea of having a wife with connections and a trust fund? Michael doesn't even know about my trust fund." Sophia pulled her hands away. "I never told him." "Of course you didn't," Victoria scoffed, "because somewhere deep down, you know I'm right to be concerned." Sophia's phone buzzed again. This time it was Michael's best man, Tony. "Hey, Soph, everything okay?" "Mike's getting nervous. Church is filling up." Grandpa George stood, leaning heavily on his cane. "We need to go, Victoria. People are waiting." Victoria crossed to the bedroom door and, to Sophia's horror, turned the key in the lock. No one is going anywhere until Sophia comes to her senses. "What are you doing?" Sophia gasped. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious," Victoria declared, dropping the key into her purse. "You're not going to your own wedding. You're not marrying that poor man." Her voice rose to a shout that Sophia had rarely heard from her always composed mother. "Victoria!" Grandpa George exclaimed. "You've gone too far. I'm protecting our family, Dad. Someday you'll both thank me." Victoria headed toward the door. "I'll tell Sandra to bring up some tea. Take the day to think, Sophia. Tomorrow, we'll call everyone and explain there's been a postponement. No one needs to know the details." "You can't do this!" Sophia lunged forward, but Victoria was already slipping through the door. "Watch me," Victoria said coldly, pulling the door shut with a decisive click. Sophia grabbed the handle, twisting it futilely as the lock engaged. She banged on the solid wood. "Mother, open this door right now. I'll be back in a few hours when you've calmed down." Victoria's voice came through the door, growing fainter as she walked away. Sophia turned to her grandfather, panic rising in her chest. "Grandpa, she's lost her mind. The wedding starts in less than 2 hours." Grandpa George's weathered face darkened with resolve. "Not if I have anything to say about it." He pulled out his cell phone. "Your grandmother would never forgive me if I let Victoria ruin your happiness like this." As Sophia sank onto the bed, her pristine wedding dress pooling around her, tears of frustration welled in her eyes. Outside her window, the perfect spring day seemed to mock her predicament. The grand old oak tree that had been her childhood refuge swayed in the breeze, its branches stretching toward her window like beckoning arms. And suddenly, Sophia knew exactly what she had to do. I'll continue with Chapter 3, which will deepen the emotional conflict. Sophia paced the bedroom, her wedding dress swishing around her ankles. Her mother had actually locked her in, like some fairy tale princess in a tower. Except this wasn't a fairy tale, and Prince Charming wasn't coming to rescue her. He was waiting at the altar, probably wondering why she wasn't answering his texts anymore. "Grandpa, what are we going to do?" Sophia asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Michael will think I've changed my mind." Grandpa George sat on the window seat, his weathered hands gripping his phone. "I've texted Robert, told him to call Victoria immediately. Your father may be wrapped around her finger, but even he won't stand for this madness." Sophia shook her head. "Dad's in Chicago until tonight. Even if he calls, Mom won't listen." She glanced at the antique clock on the mantel. 1 hour and 20 minutes until the ceremony. Her stomach twisted into knots. "Then we do this the old-fashioned way," Grandpa George said, a mischievous glint in his eye as he nodded toward the massive oak tree outside. "Remember how you used to climb down that tree when you were 16? Snuck out to that rock concert with your friends?" "Grandpa!" Sophia gasped. "You knew about that?" "I know everything," he winked. "Your grandmother and I weren't always the stuffy old people Victoria made us out to be. We had our rebellions too." Sophia approached the window, examining the sturdy branches. "I haven't climbed this tree in years, and I'm wearing a wedding dress. It's either that, or let Victoria win," Grandpa George said simply. The weight of those words hit Sophia like a physical blow. This wasn't just about today. If she surrendered now, her mother would control every aspect of her life forever. She thought about Michael, his patient smile, the way he'd held her when she'd cried after particularly difficult confrontations with Victoria. "I don't care about your family's money, Soph," he'd said. "I'd marry you if you didn't have a penny to your name." A memory surfaced. Sophia at 10 years old, wearing a new dress for a piano recital. Victoria fussing over every detail, criticizing her posture, her hair, the way she walked. "You represent the Hayes family," she'd said. "Everything you do reflects on us." Another flash. 16-year-old Sophia, bringing home a B+ on a calculus test. Victoria's disapproving frown. Hayes women don't settle for anything less than excellence. Then, the crushing memory that still haunted her. 21-year-old Sophia announcing she wanted to be a teacher rather than attend law school. Victoria's cold silence for weeks afterward. "Teaching is a hobby, not a career," she'd finally said. "You'll grow out of this phase." But Sophia hadn't grown out of it. She'd followed her heart and found joy in her classroom every day, watching children's eyes light up with understanding, just as she'd followed her heart to Michael. "I need to get to that wedding," Sophia said, with newfound determination. "That's my girl," Grandpa George smiled. "Now, let's figure out how to get a bride and an old man down from a second-story window." Sophia looked down at her wedding dress, the delicate beading that had cost more than a month's salary at her teaching job. Victoria's choice, of course. There was no way to climb down a tree in this gown without destroying it. "The dress stays," she decided, reaching behind to unzip it. "I'd rather get married in jeans than not get married at all." While Sophia changed into a pair of leggings and a t-shirt she found in her old dresser, carefully placing her wedding dress on the bed, Grandpa George kept watch at the door. "Do you hear that?" he whispered suddenly. Sophia paused, listening. From downstairs came the sound of raised voices, Victoria and someone else. A moment later, the distinctive voice of Sandra, their housekeeper, drifted up. "Mrs. Hayes, please be reasonable," Sandra pleaded. "The girl is just in love." "Love doesn't last, Sandra." Victoria's sharp response came. "Position, stability, compatibility, those things last." "Like they did for you and Mr. Hayes?" Sandra's usually deferential tone had an edge to it. "Begging your pardon, ma'am, but we all know that's not a happy marriage." There was a crash, something being thrown, perhaps, followed by Victoria's cold command. "You're fired, Sandra. Pack your things and be out by tomorrow." Sophia's heart sank. Sandra had been with them for 15 years, had practically raised her when Victoria was too busy with charity galas and Robert was traveling for business. Now, Sandra was losing her job because of her. "I can't let this happen," Sophia murmured. "She's destroying everything." Grandpa George squeezed her shoulder. "This isn't your fault, Soph. Victoria has always been this way, trying to control everything, everyone. Your grandmother and I, we failed her somehow." "No, Grandpa," Sophia said firmly. "Mom makes her own choices, just like I make mine." With renewed resolve, Sophia finished changing and stuffed her wedding heels into a tote bag she found in her closet. "I'll change at the church. My dress is in the bridal suite, not this one, but the one I actually wanted." "Smart girl." Grandpa George nodded approvingly. "Always have a backup plan." "I learned from the best," Sophia smiled, remembering how her grandfather had taught her chess as a child. "Always think 3 moves ahead," he'd said. They approached the window, and Sophia pushed it open. The spring air rushed in, carrying the scent of blooming magnolias. The old oak tree stood sturdy and waiting, its familiar branches beckoning. "You first," Grandpa George said. "I'll follow." Sophia hesitated. "Grandpa, you're hip. Maybe you should stay. I can send someone back for you." "And miss walking my only granddaughter down the aisle?" "Not a chance," he declared. "I may be old, but I'm not dead yet." Tears pricked Sophia's eyes as she hugged him tightly. "Thank you for always being on my side." "Always will be," he promised. "Now go on. Your young man is waiting." Sophia climbed onto the windowsill, reaching for the nearest branch. It had been years since she'd done this, but her body remembered. One foot, then the other, testing each branch carefully before putting her full weight on it. The rough bark scraped her hands, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was Michael, standing at the altar, checking his watch with increasing concern. As she made her descent, memories of her childhood tumbled through her mind. Climbing this same tree to escape her mother's endless criticism. Hiding among its leaves with a forbidden novel instead of practicing piano. Sitting in its highest branches, dreaming of a life where she could make her own choices. Now she was making the most important choice of her life, and no one, not even Victoria Hayes, could stop her. From above, she heard Grandpa George's labored breathing as he carefully navigated the first few branches. Below, the ground seemed both too close and impossibly far. Halfway down, the hem of her t-shirt caught on a broken branch, and as she tugged it free, she heard the sound of tearing fabric. A perfect metaphor, she thought bitterly. Everything in her life was tearing apart today. Her relationship with her mother, Sandra's employment, even her clothes. But something new was emerging from the tatters. Something stronger, more authentic, something that was entirely hers. Her feet finally touched the ground, and she looked up anxiously, watching Grandpa George's slow, careful descent. "You're doing great, Grandpa," she called softly. Inside the house, a door slammed. Victoria's voice carried through an open window. "Sandra, bring tea to Sophia's room, and check that she's calmed down." Time was running out. I'll continue with Chapter 4, where the conflict will be further aggravated, but will also include a small hope. "Hurry, Grandpa," Sophia whispered urgently, as George's feet finally touched the ground. He winced as he straightened, one hand pressing against his hip. "Not as spry as I used to be," he chuckled weakly, but still got it. A car horn honked from the street, startling them both. Sophia peered around the massive trunk of the oak to see Tony, Michael's best man, waving frantically from his beat-up blue sedan. "Your young man sent reinforcements," Grandpa George grinned. "Smart fellow." Tony jumped out, rushing toward them. "Michael's freaking out. He thought you might have cold feet. What's going on? And why are you wearing—" He gestured at her casual clothes, confusion written across his face. "My mother locked me in my bedroom to prevent me from getting to the wedding," Sophia explained quickly. "We escaped through the window." Tony's mouth fell open. "She did what? That's like kidnapping or something." "No time to discuss legalities," Grandpa George interrupted. "We've got a wedding to get to." They hurried to the car, Sophia helping her grandfather into the back seat before climbing in beside Tony. As they pulled away from the curb, Sophia glanced back at the imposing Hayes mansion. Through the parlor window, she caught a glimpse of her mother's rigid silhouette. A chill ran down her spine. "My dress is at the church," Sophia explained as Tony navigated through traffic. "The one Mom picked out is still in the bedroom." "We're cutting it close," Tony said, checking the dashboard clock. "Ceremony's in 45 minutes. Half the guests are already seated." Sophia's phone buzzed with an incoming call. "Michael." She answered immediately, her voice catching. "Michael, I'm so sorry." "Soph, are you okay?" His voice was tight with concern. "What's happening?" "My mother happened," she replied, tears threatening. "She locked me in my room to stop me from coming. Said some awful things about you. But I'm on my way now. Tony found us. Grandpa's with me." There was silence for a moment. Then Michael spoke, his voice gentle but firm. "Sophia, listen to me. If this is too much, if the pressure from your family is—" "Don't you dare!" she cut him off. "Don't you dare give me an out. I am marrying you today, Michael Reeves, even if I have to do it in these leggings and t-shirt." His relieved laughter warmed her heart. "I'd marry you if you showed up in a garbage bag. Let's hope it doesn't come to that." She smiled through her tears. "The backup dress is waiting at the church." "I'll be the one at the altar," he replied. "Can't miss me, I'll be wearing a tux and the dopiest smile you've ever seen." As they hung up, Sophia felt a surge of renewed determination. This was her day, her choice, her future. Then her phone buzzed again. Her father. Taking a deep breath, she answered. "Dad?" "Sophia Christine Hayes. What in God's name is going on?" Robert Hayes's voice boomed through the speaker. "Your mother is hysterical. Says you climbed out a window? She locked me in my bedroom to stop me from getting married," Sophia stated flatly. "What did she think would happen?" "She says she's protecting you from making a terrible mistake," her father countered. "The only mistake would be letting Mom decide who I should love," Sophia replied. "Dad, I'm marrying Michael today. I'd really like you to be happy for me, but I'm doing this with or without your blessing." A heavy sigh came through the phone. "You're just like your grandfather. Stubborn as a mule." There was a pause. "Is he with you?" "Yes," Sophia confirmed. "Put him on." Sophia handed the phone to Grandpa George, who listened for several moments, occasionally interjecting with, and "Yes, Robert," before finally saying, "She's a grown woman, son. Time to let her make her own choices." After another pause, he added, "Yes, I'll make sure she gets there safely," before hanging up and returning the phone. "What did he say?" Sophia asked anxiously. "He's caught between a rock and a hard place," Grandpa George replied diplomatically. "But he knows better than to try to stop a train that's already left the station." Tony took a sharp turn, cursing under his breath. "Traffic's backed up on Main. We'll have to take the long way around." Sophia checked the time. 30 minutes until the ceremony. Her stomach churned with anxiety. They'd make it, but with little time to spare. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Sandra. "Your mother knows you're gone. She's on her way to the church. Be careful." "Oh, God," Sophia moaned. "Mom's heading to the church to try to stop the wedding." Tony pressed harder on the accelerator. "Not if we get there first." The car lurched forward, weaving through side streets. As they rounded a corner too quickly, a loud bang startled them all. A rear tire blowing out. "No! No! No!" Tony slammed his palm against the steering wheel as he pulled to the side of the road. "This cannot be happening." Sophia fought back tears of frustration. Was the universe conspiring against her? Just then, a motorcycle pulled up alongside them, its rider removing his helmet to reveal Jake, one of Michael's carpenter friends. "Thought that was you," he called through the open window. "Everything okay?" "Flat tire, and we're in a serious rush to get Sophia to her wedding," Tony explained frantically. Jake glanced at his watch, then at Sophia. "I can take the bride on my bike. Be there in 10 minutes. Traffic's not bad on a motorcycle." Sophia looked at Grandpa George, torn. "I can't leave you." "Go," he insisted. "Tony can change the tire and bring me. You're the one who needs to be there." Before she could protest further, Jake handed her a spare helmet. "It's your wedding day, Sophia. Time to decide what you really want." The choice was clear. Sophia hugged her grandfather quickly, whispered, "See you at the church," and climbed onto the back of Jake's motorcycle. "Hold on tight," Jake advised as she fastened the helmet. As they wove through traffic, wind whipping around her, Sophia felt strangely free. The girl who had always tried to please everyone, who had spent years walking on eggshells around her mother's expectations, was gone. In her place was a woman who knew exactly what she wanted and was willing to fight for it. They sped past a sleek black town car that Sophia immediately recognized as her mother's. Victoria was in the back seat, her face a mask of fury as she spotted her daughter on the motorcycle. For the first time in her life, Sophia didn't feel afraid of her mother's anger. Instead, she felt something like pity. Victoria had spent so many years controlling everything and everyone around her, she'd forgotten how to simply live, how to love, unconditionally. As the church spire came into view, Sophia sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. Despite everything, the locked bedroom, the escape down a tree, the flat tire, she was going to make it. She was going to marry Michael. The motorcycle came to a stop at the back entrance of the church, where Lisa, her maid of honor, was pacing anxiously on the steps, "Sophia!" Lisa cried, rushing forward. "Thank God. Everyone's seated. Michael's at the altar, and your mother's car just pulled up out front. What happened to your dress?" "Long story," Sophia replied, dismounting and removing the helmet. "Is my dress here? The backup one?" "Yes, in the bridal suite," Lisa confirmed, leading her quickly inside. "But we have maybe 10 minutes before the ceremony's supposed to start." As they rushed through the hallway, Sophia heard the unmistakable click of her mother's heels entering the church foyer. "Hurry," she whispered, ducking into the bridal suite. The simple white dress she'd secretly purchased as a backup hung waiting. No elaborate beading, no designer label, just clean lines and simple elegance, exactly what she'd wanted all along. As Lisa helped her into it, Sophia caught sight of herself in the mirror, hair wind-tousled from the motorcycle ride, cheeks flushed with adrenaline, eyes bright with determination. She'd never felt more beautiful. I'll continue with Chapter 5, which involves the hope being destroyed by a major twist. The church bustled with nervous energy as Lisa put the finishing touches on Sophia's hair, fashioning the wind-tousled strands into an elegant updo adorned with small white flowers. "You look stunning," Lisa declared, stepping back to admire her work. Simple, but perfect. A gentle knock on the door made them both freeze. "Who is it?" Lisa called cautiously. "It's me, Sandra," came the familiar voice of the Hayes' housekeeper. Lisa opened the door a crack, then quickly ushered Sandra inside. The older woman carried a small velvet box. "Your mother fired me," Sandra said without preamble. "But before I left, I took this from her safe." She opened the box to reveal a delicate pearl necklace. "Your grandmother's pearls. Your mother was keeping them from you, but they were meant for your wedding day." Tears filled Sophia's eyes as Sandra fastened the pearls around her neck. "Thank you," she whispered, touching the smooth orbs reverently. "This means everything to me." "You deserve happiness, child," Sandra said firmly. "Now, your grandfather just arrived with that nice young man, Tony. They're ready when you are." A quick glance at the clock showed it was time. The organist had already begun playing the prelude music, the familiar notes floating down the hallway. "Your mother is in the foyer, arguing with the minister," Sandra warned, "but I've instructed the ushers not to let her disrupt anything." Sophia took a deep breath, smoothing down her simple white dress. "Then let's not keep everyone waiting." They slipped out of the bridal suite and down a side hallway to where Grandpa George waited, looking distinguished in his tuxedo, despite his earlier adventure climbing down a tree. "Look at you," he beamed, "the spitting image of your grandmother on our wedding day." "I have her pearls." Sophia touched the necklace. "Perfect." He nodded approvingly, offering his arm. "Ready to get married, my dear?" As they positioned themselves at the back of the sanctuary, the music shifted to the traditional wedding march. The doors swung open, and Sophia gasped at the sight before her. The church was filled with smiling faces turned expectantly toward her. At the altar stood Michael, handsome in his rented tuxedo, his eyes lighting up as he caught sight of her. The journey down the aisle felt like floating on air. Sophia barely registered the whispers about her simple dress, so different from what Victoria Hayes' daughter was expected to wear. All she could see was Michael, his smile growing wider with each step she took toward him. Halfway down the aisle, movement caught her eye. Her mother stood at the side entrance, her face a storm cloud of fury. Beside her was James Whitmore III, the lawyer's son she'd been trying to push on Sophia for years. Sophia faltered momentarily, but Grandpa George's steady arm kept her moving forward. "Don't look at them," he whispered. "Look at your future." When they reached the altar, Grandpa George placed Sophia's hand in Michael's, the carpenter's calloused fingers warm and reassuring against her own. "Who gives this woman to be married?" the minister asked. "She gives herself," Grandpa George replied with a wink at Sophia, "but she has my blessing and support." As he stepped aside, Michael squeezed Sophia's hands. "You made it," he whispered. "I was worried. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, she smiled back. The ceremony proceeded beautifully. They exchanged heartfelt vows they'd written themselves, promises of love and partnership that brought tears to many eyes. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Michael's kiss was tender and perfect, sealing their commitment amid cheers from their friends. As they turned to face their guests as Mr. and Mrs. Reeves, Sophia noticed her mother was no longer standing by the side entrance. A pang of sadness mingled with her joy. Despite everything, some part of her had hoped Victoria would eventually accept her choice. The reception was held in the church garden, a simple affair with fairy lights strung through the trees and wildflowers adorning every table. It was nothing like the lavish hotel ballroom Victoria had wanted, but it was exactly what Sophia and Michael had dreamed of. During their first dance, Michael held her close. "Rough morning?" he teased gently. "You have no idea," she laughed. "I climbed down a tree in my childhood bedroom, rode a motorcycle to my wedding, and defied my mother, all before noon. My wife, the rebel," he grinned, spinning her in a gentle twirl. The evening progressed with cake-cutting, toasts, and dancing. Grandpa George charmed everyone with stories of his own wedding 60 years earlier. Sophia felt surrounded by love, real love, not the conditional approval her mother had always offered. As the celebration began winding down, Sandra approached with an envelope. "This came for you," she said quietly. "A messenger just delivered it." The heavy cream envelope bore the Hayes family seal. Inside was a single sheet of expensive stationery covered in Victoria's elegant handwriting. "Sophia, your defiance today has consequences. Your trust fund has been revoked, effective immediately. The apartment you live in, which is in our name, will no longer be available to you after the end of the month. Your father and I are deeply disappointed by your choices and cannot support this unsuitable match. When you come to your senses, we will discuss your reintegration into the family." "Mother." Sophia's hands trembled as she read the words. She'd known her mother would be angry, but this was beyond what she'd expected. The trust fund had been established by her grandparents. It was supposed to be untouchable. And her apartment, where would they live now? Michael noticed her distress. "What is it?" he asked, taking the letter and reading it quickly, his expression darkening. "She can't do this. Can she?" "I think she can," Sophia said numbly. "The trust was administered by my parents until I turned 30, and the apartment is in their name." Michael pulled her close. "Hey, we'll figure it out. I have my apartment. It's small, but—" "It's not that," Sophia interrupted. "It's just, she's really cutting me off completely over who I chose to love." The joy of the day dimmed as reality set in. Sophia was a kindergarten teacher with modest savings. Michael's carpentry business was growing but still new. They'd counted on having her apartment for at least the first year of marriage while they saved for a place of their own. Grandpa George joined them, concern etched on his face as he noticed the letter. "Victoria?" he guessed. Sophia nodded silently, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "Let me see," he requested, reading the letter with a deepening frown. "This is low, even for her." "What do we do now?" Sophia asked, feeling suddenly very young and vulnerable. Before Grandpa George could answer, commotion erupted at the entrance to the garden. Victoria Hayes strode in, accompanied by two men in suits who looked distinctly out of place among the wedding guests. "There she is," Victoria pointed at Sophia. "That's the necklace." One of the men approached. "Excuse me, Mrs. Reeves. I'm Detective Morales. We've received a report that you're in possession of stolen property." "What?" Sophia touched her grandmother's pearls in confusion. "Those pearls are family heirlooms valued at over $50,000, Victoria declared loudly, causing guests to turn and stare. "They were taken from my safe without permission." "That's ridiculous!" Sandra stepped forward. "Those pearls belonged to her grandmother, who wanted Sophia to have them on her wedding day. Do you have documentation of that?" Detective Morales asked. Sophia stood frozen in shock. Her mother was actually trying to have her arrested at her own wedding reception for wearing her grandmother's pearls. "I can verify the grandmother's wishes," Grandpa George stated firmly. "The pearls were Margaret's, my late wife's. She specifically left them to Sophia." The detective looked uncertain, glancing between Victoria's cold determination and the united front of Sophia, Michael, Grandpa George, and Sandra. "This appears to be a family dispute," he said finally. "I suggest you return the necklace to your mother for now, Mrs. Reeves, until ownership can be legally established." With trembling fingers, Sophia unclasped the pearl necklace, the last connection to her grandmother. As she handed it to the detective, Victoria's triumphant smile made her stomach turn. "This isn't over," Victoria announced, her voice carrying across the now silent garden. "You've made your choice, Sophia. Now you'll live with the consequences." Treason. As Victoria turned to leave, followed by the embarrassed detectives, whispers erupted among the remaining guests. What had been a perfect day was now tainted by scandal and humiliation. Michael's arm tightened around Sophia's waist. "We should go," he murmured, "before she comes up with something else." Tears streaming down her face, Sophia nodded. Their honeymoon was supposed to start tomorrow. A simple week at a beach cottage owned by Michael's friend. Now it felt like they were fleeing rather than celebrating. As they said hasty goodbyes and prepared to leave, Grandpa George pulled Sophia aside. "Don't let her win," he said fiercely. "This is exactly what she wants, to ruin your happiness, so you'll come crawling back." "What am I going to do?" Sophia whispered. "She's taken everything." "Not everything," Grandpa George countered. "You have your husband, you have your integrity, and you have me." He pressed a key into her palm. "My lake house. It's yours for as long as you need it." Fresh tears, these of gratitude, filled Sophia's eyes. "Grandpa, go," he urged. "Start your life together. I'll deal with Victoria." As they drove away from the church in Michael's old truck, Sophia leaned against his shoulder, emotionally and physically exhausted. Her wedding day had been nothing like she'd imagined. Locked rooms, daring escapes, family betrayal. Yet somehow, sitting beside Michael as he drove them toward an uncertain future, she felt a strange sense of peace. "I'm sorry," she said softly, "about the trust fund, the apartment, everything." Michael took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I didn't marry your trust fund, Soph. I married you." As the church disappeared from view in the rear-view mirror, Sophia made a silent vow. Whatever came next, whatever challenges her mother threw at them, she would face them with the same courage she'd found today. Victoria Hayes had taken her financial security, her home, even her grandmother's pearls, but she hadn't taken her freedom to choose her own path, and that was worth more than all the trust funds in the world. I'll continue with Chapter 6, where everything seems lost. 3 weeks after their wedding day, Sophia sat cross-legged on the wooden floor of Grandpa George's lake house, surrounded by cardboard boxes. The afternoon sun filtered through dusty windows, illuminating dancing particles in the air, as she carefully wrapped her few remaining possessions in newspaper. Michael was due home from work soon, and she wanted to have most of the packing finished before he arrived. The eviction notice had come exactly as Victoria had promised, delivered by courier on the last day of the month, giving them 48 hours to vacate the apartment. They'd spent those 2 days in a frenzy, packing essential items and selling what wouldn't fit in Michael's truck, or the small storage unit they could afford. The beautiful wedding gifts from their friends had been carefully stored, awaiting the day they'd have a real home to use them in. Sophia picked up a framed photo of herself with her kindergarten class, their little faces beaming with gap-toothed smiles. Her principal had been understanding but firm, with budget cuts looming and pressure from several board members with connections to the Hayes family. Her contract wouldn't be renewed for the fall semester. "Nothing personal," he'd assured her uncomfortably. "Just politics." She knew exactly what kind of politics he meant. Victoria Hayes sat on numerous charity boards and foundation committees. Her influence extended throughout the city like an invisible web, and she was using every strand to tighten the noose around her daughter's new life. The sound of tires on gravel announced Michael's return. Sophia quickly wiped away the tears she hadn't realized were falling. He had enough to worry about without seeing her cry again. The front door opened, and Michael's footsteps crossed the old wooden porch. When he entered, his face told her everything before he spoke a word. "They pulled the Anderson contract," he said flatly, dropping his tool belt on a nearby chair. "The biggest job my company had lined up this year." Sophia's heart sank. "Mom? Who else?" Michael ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Mrs. Anderson called personally to apologize. Said they'd received a better offer from Lux Renovations." He laughed bitterly. "Lux Renovations is owned by James Whitmore Sr., the same Whitmore family her mother had been pushing her toward for years." "Of course." Michael sat heavily on the floor beside her, careful not to disturb her organized packing system. "How was your day?" "I sold my car," Sophia said quietly. "We need the money more than we need 2 vehicles, especially with—" She trailed off, not wanting to remind him of her employment situation. "Soph, I'm so sorry," Michael began, but she shook her head. "Don't. This isn't your fault." "But it is," he insisted. "If you hadn't married me, if I hadn't married you, I'd be miserable," she interrupted fiercely. "I'd be trapped in my mother's world forever, probably engaged to James Whitmore Jr. by now, planning a society wedding I didn't want." Michael took her hand, his calloused thumb gently stroking her palm. "We're going to get through this." But the confident tone he'd maintained these past weeks was fraying at the edges. They both knew their savings were dwindling rapidly. The lake house was a temporary haven, but it was remote, a 40-minute drive to town, and winterizing it would be expensive come fall. Michael had been driving nearly 2 hours each way to job sites, burning precious gas money. Without the Anderson contract, his fledgling carpentry business might not survive. "Grandpa called while you were out," Sophia said, changing the subject. "He's being frozen out too. Mom and Dad canceled his country club membership, and his bridge partners suddenly can't make their weekly game." Michael's expression darkened. "They're punishing him for helping us?" "That's how she operates," Sophia sighed. "Total warfare." She reached for another framed photo, this one of her parents on their wedding day. Victoria looked beautiful, but controlled, not a hair out of place. Robert stood proudly beside her, already the successful banker. It was a perfect society wedding, exactly the kind Victoria had wanted for her daughter. Sophia had kept the photo as a reminder of what she'd escaped, but now she carefully removed it from the frame and tore it in half, separating her parents. The symbolic gesture gave her a small measure of satisfaction. "I got another text from Dad today," she said softly. "He wants to meet for coffee next week." "Are you going to go?" Michael asked carefully. They'd been down this road before, Robert reaching out, hinting at reconciliation, only to report back to Victoria that her daughter remained stubborn and unreasonable. "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "Part of me wants to believe he's finally standing up to her, but he never has before," Michael finished gently. The golden light of afternoon was fading now, the lake outside turning silver in the approaching dusk. In another life, this would have been a romantic getaway, not a last resort for a couple whose lives were unraveling. "I applied for a teaching position in Millfield," Sophia said suddenly. "It's almost an hour away, but they need a kindergarten teacher for fall. Pay's not great, but it's something." Michael nodded slowly. "I could look for construction work there. Start over." The thought hung heavy between them. Starting over meant admitting defeat, leaving the city where they'd built their lives, where Michael had established his reputation as a skilled craftsman. It meant Victoria had won. "I'm so tired of fighting," Sophia whispered, voice breaking. "Every day it's something new. The apartment, my job, your contracts. What's next? Will she call the bank and get our loan application denied?" Have our car repossessed? Where does it end? Michael pulled her into his arms as the tears she'd been holding back all day finally broke free. Shh, he soothed, stroking her hair. We'll figure it out. We always do. But his reassurances felt hollow. They'd been saying the same things for weeks, watching as Victoria systematically dismantled every aspect of their lives. The brave defiance Sophia had felt on her wedding day had eroded, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. Maybe, she began, then stopped herself. Maybe what? Michael pulled back to look at her face. Nothing, she shook her head. It's stupid. Tell me, he insisted. Sophia took a deep breath. Maybe we should just give in. Go to her. Apologize. Play by her rules until we can get back on our feet. The words felt like ash in her mouth, but desperation was setting in. They couldn't live at the lake house forever. Winter would come. Bills would pile up. Without steady work, their situation would only worsen. Michael's face fell, and she immediately regretted voicing the thought. Is that what you want? He asked quietly. No, she answered honestly. But I don't want to watch us lose everything either. I don't want you to resent me when your business fails, because you married into the wrong family. Soph, be honest. She pulled away slightly. Would you be in this position if you hadn't married me? Michael was silent for a long moment. No, he finally admitted. But I also wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't have you. His phone buzzed with an incoming text. He glanced at it, his expression shifting from resignation to confusion. It's from Tony. He says to turn on the local news right now. Sophia reached for the remote control, flicking on the small television in the corner. The evening news was just starting, and the anchor's words made them both freeze. Our top story tonight. Socialite Victoria Hayes faces potential fraud charges after whistleblower documents suggest financial improprieties at the Hayes Family Foundation. The charitable organization, which distributes millions in grants annually, is under scrutiny after allegations of misappropriated funds and tax evasion spanning several years. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! The report continued, showing footage of Victoria and Robert leaving a downtown building, shielding their faces from cameras. The news anchor detailed allegations of funds being diverted from charitable projects to personal expenses, fake donations created for tax write-offs, and grant money allocated to shell companies connected to Hayes Family Investments. The whistleblower, who remains anonymous, provided extensive documentation to both the press and authorities, the anchor continued. The Hayes Family Foundation has issued a statement denying all allegations and promising full cooperation with any investigation. This can't be real, Sophia whispered, stunned. Michael's phone buzzed again with another text from Tony. Guess who's not returning calls anymore? Every society friend your mom was using to blacklist you. As the implications sank in, Sophia felt a complex wave of emotions. Shock, vindication, and an unexpected pang of sadness for her mother. Victoria's carefully constructed world was collapsing around her, just as she'd tried to collapse Sophia's. Do you think Grandpa? She began. Michael shook his head. He wouldn't. Despite everything, he loves her. She's still his daughter. The phone rang. Grandpa George, as if summoned by their conversation. Are you watching the news? He asked without preamble when Sophia answered. Yes, she confirmed. Grandpa, did you know about this? Not the extent of it. He sighed heavily. I suspected Robert's banking practices weren't entirely above board, and Victoria's foundation always seemed to have selective bookkeeping. But this is worse than I imagined. Do you know who the whistleblower is? Sophia asked. I have my suspicions, Grandpa George replied cryptically. But that's not important right now. What matters is that your mother's influence has suddenly evaporated. The same people who were doing her bidding yesterday are pretending they never knew her today. As they hung up, Sophia turned to Michael, feeling oddly hollow. So that's it? Mom's social downfall means we're free? He took her hand. It means she can't hurt us anymore. At least not the way she has been. Sophia should have felt triumphant. After weeks of punishment and persecution, Victoria was facing her own consequences. The tables had turned completely. Instead, she felt a profound emptiness. Her mother, controlling, manipulative, and cruel as she'd been, was still her mother. The woman who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd held her hand on her first day of school, who'd nursed her through childhood illnesses. "I should be happy," Sophia whispered, tears welling again. "Why am I not happy?" Michael pulled her close. "Because you're a better person than she is." As night fell over the lake, Sophia sat on the porch steps, watching fireflies dance above the water. Michael was inside, making calls to clients who might suddenly be willing to work with him again now that the Hayes influence had waned. The vindication she'd expected to feel remained elusive. Instead, a dull ache had settled in her chest, a grief for the mother-daughter relationship she'd never truly had. Despite everything Victoria had done, some small part of Sophia still yearned for her approval, her love. Her phone lit up with a message from her father. Just 2 words. "I'm sorry. Too little. Too late," she thought bitterly, setting the phone aside without responding. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Their financial situation remained precarious. The damage to Michael's business reputation wouldn't be repaired overnight. Her teaching prospects were still uncertain. But for the first time in weeks, Sophia allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. Not because of her mother's downfall, but because they had survived the worst she could throw at them. They were still together, still fighting. As Michael came to join her on the steps, wrapping a warm arm around her shoulders, Sophia leaned into his embrace. They sat in silence, watching the stars emerge above the lake. Tomorrow would be another day, another chance to rebuild what had been broken, another opportunity to choose love over bitterness. Tonight, that was enough. I'll continue with Chapter 7, The Surprising Turn and Emotional Resolution. 6 months had passed since the news broke about Victoria Hayes's financial misdeeds. Autumn had given way to winter, and now the first tentative signs of spring appeared around the lake house that Sophia and Michael had ultimately decided to make their permanent home. Grandpa George had officially signed it over to them as a belated wedding gift, and they'd spent the colder months renovating it room by room, transforming the rustic retreat into a cozy haven that reflected their combined tastes. Sophia stood at the kitchen window, sipping her morning coffee as she watched a pair of cardinals flit between the bare branches of an oak tree. Her teaching position at Millfield Elementary had evolved into a full-time role with benefits, and though the commute was long, she'd grown to love the small-town school with its tight-knit community. Michael's carpentry business had not only recovered, but thrived. Once free from Victoria's blacklisting, former clients had returned, bringing new ones with them. His reputation for quality craftsmanship had spread beyond the city, and he'd even hired Tony part-time to help with the growing workload. Life had settled into a rhythm that, while different from what they'd planned, brought its own satisfactions. The vindication they'd felt watching Victoria's downfall had faded, replaced by a quiet contentment in the life they were building together. The ringing of Sophia's phone interrupted her thoughts. Grandpa George's name flashed on the screen, and she answered with a smile. "Good morning, Grandpa." "Sophia, dear." His voice sounded strained. "I need to tell you something, and I'd rather you hear it from me than the news." Her stomach tightened. "What's happened?" "It's your mother," he said gravely. "She's in the hospital. A minor stroke, they're saying." The coffee mug nearly slipped from Sophia's fingers. "A stroke? Will she be okay?" "Physically, the doctors think so. It was caught early, but—" He hesitated. "Sophia, she's not doing well in other ways. The foundation scandal, the legal troubles, your father filing for divorce. It's been too much." The news of her father's divorce proceedings had reached Sophia months ago. Robert Hayes had finally found the courage to break free from Victoria's control, though Sophia suspected it had more to do with saving his own reputation than any moral awakening. Their relationship remained cordial but distant, occasional text messages, and one uncomfortable lunch that had confirmed They were better off with boundaries. But her mother, Sophia, hadn't spoken to Victoria since the wedding day. "Where is she?" Sophia asked, surprising herself with the question. "Mercy General, 6th floor." Grandpa George paused. "She's asking for you, Soph." Those words hung in the air between them. Victoria Hayes, the woman who had locked her daughter in a bedroom to prevent her wedding, who had systematically tried to destroy her marriage, was now asking for her. "I don't know if I can," Sophia admitted. "After everything she did." "I understand," Grandpa George assured her. "No one would blame you for staying away, least of all me." After they hung up, Sophia remained at the window, watching the Cardinals, now joined by their mates. A family unit, working together, supporting each other. Everything her own family had failed to be. Michael found her there an hour later, still staring out at the lake, lost in thought. "Hey," he said gently, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Everything okay?" Sophia leaned back against his solid warmth. "My mother had a stroke. She's in the hospital." His arms tightened around her. "I'm so sorry, Soph. Is it serious?" "Grandpa says she'll recover physically, but—" He turned to face him. "He's asking for me." Understanding dawned in Michael's eyes. "And you don't know if you want to go." "Is that terrible?" Sophia asked, vulnerability creeping into her voice. "Part of me thinks I should just let her suffer alone, the way she tried to make us suffer." Michael brushed a strand of hair from her face. "What does the other part think?" "That she's still my mother," Sophia whispered, "and that I don't want to be the person she tried to make me, someone who uses power to hurt others." He nodded slowly. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. If you want to see her, I'll drive you there. If you want to stay away, I'll support that too." Sophia closed her eyes, sorting through the tangle of emotions inside her. The hurt was still there, a deep well of pain from years of conditional love and manipulation. But beneath it was something else, a recognition that Victoria, for all her power and privilege, was ultimately a deeply unhappy woman who had tried to control everything around her because she couldn't control her own emptiness. "I need to see her," Sophia decided. "Not for her, for me." 2 hours later, Sophia stood outside room 637 at Mercy General Hospital, her heart pounding against her ribs. Michael had offered to come in with her, but this was something she needed to do alone. Taking a deep breath, she knocked softly and pushed the door open. The woman in the hospital bed barely resembled the formidable Victoria Hayes who had terrorized Sophia's wedding day. Without her carefully applied makeup and designer clothes, Victoria looked smaller, vulnerable, her skin pale against the white sheets. One side of her face drooped slightly, evidence of the stroke that had finally forced her to relinquish control. "Mother," Sophia said quietly, stepping into the room. Victoria's eyes widened in surprise. "Sophia, you came." Her speech was slightly slurred, another effect of the stroke. "Grandpa George called me." Sophia remained by the door, uncertain. "I didn't think—" "After everything," Victoria struggled with the words. "Please, sit." Hesitantly, Sophia moved to the chair beside the bed. Up close, the changes in her mother were even more apparent. Victoria had aged years in the past 6 months, deep lines etched around her eyes and mouth, her once perfect hair now streaked with gray. "How are you?" Victoria asked, an unfamiliar hesitancy in her voice. "I'm well," Sophia answered simply. "Michael and I live at Grandpa's lake house now. I'm teaching at Millfield Elementary." Victoria nodded slowly. "And you're happy?" The question caught Sophia off guard. In all her 27 years, her mother had never once asked if she was happy. "Yes," she said truthfully, "I am." A silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Victoria reached for the water glass on her bedside table, her hand trembling visibly. Without thinking, Sophia leaned forward to help her, steadying the glass as her mother drank. "Thank you," Victoria murmured, a flush of embarrassment coloring her pale cheeks. "The doctors say the weakness will improve with therapy." "That's good," Sophia replied, setting the glass down. Another silence stretched between them, until Victoria spoke again, her voice barely audible. "I was wrong." Sophia's head snapped up, certain she'd misheard. "What? About everything?" Victoria continued, each word seeming to cost her great effort. "Your husband, your career. I was wrong." Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. All those years, all those fights, all those cutting remarks and manipulations, and now, this simple admission. "Why did you do it?" Sophia asked, the question that had haunted her for months finally finding voice. "Why couldn't you just let me be happy?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears of her own. "Because I wasn't. I've never been happy, Sophia. Not truly. I married for status, for security. I did what was expected. I thought, if you did the same, at least you wouldn't be disappointed when love failed you. But love didn't fail me," Sophia said softly. "It saved me." Victoria's gaze dropped to her hands, now twisted in the hospital blanket. "I know that now. Watching you fight for your marriage, even as I tried to destroy it, I've never fought for anything that way." Sophia sat in stunned silence, absorbing her mother's words. The Victoria Hayes she knew never admitted weakness, never acknowledged mistakes. "The foundation," Sophia began hesitantly. "I'll likely face charges." Victoria nodded slightly. "What I did was wrong. I always justified it. The money was going to good causes eventually, just with detours that benefited us. And Dad?" A flash of the old bitterness crossed Victoria's face. Robert jumped ship the moment trouble started. After 30 years of marriage, he couldn't distance himself fast enough. She attempted a weak smile. "Can't say I blame him. I wasn't exactly a loving wife." Something shifted in Sophia's chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Her mother had been trapped in a prison of her own making, desperately clutching at control because she'd never known true partnership or love. "I have no right to ask anything of you," Victoria continued softly, "but I wanted to see you, to tell you that losing everything, the foundation, my reputation, even Robert, none of that compared to losing you." A tear slipped down Sophia's cheek, then another. "Why now, Mom? Why couldn't you see this before?" "Sometimes we don't see clearly until everything is taken away," Victoria answered, her own tears falling freely now. "I don't expect your forgiveness. I needed you to know that I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Sophia's mind flashed back to her wedding day, the locked room, the escape down the tree, the motorcycle ride to the church. In the midst of her mother's cruelty, she'd discovered her own strength, her capacity to fight for what she truly wanted. In a strange way, Victoria's opposition had forged the woman Sophia had become. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Sophia said honestly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever completely." Victoria nodded in resigned acceptance. "I understand. But," Sophia continued, surprising herself, "I don't want to hold on to anger anymore. It takes too much energy, and I have a life I want to live." Hope flickered in Victoria's eyes. "Does that mean, might I see you again?" Sophia considered the question carefully. "Yes," she finally answered. "Not right away, and not often at first. But yes, I think so." Relief washed over Victoria's face. "Thank you," she whispered. As Sophia prepared to leave, Victoria called her name once more. "Sophia, there's something in the drawer there. For you." Curious, Sophia opened the bedside drawer. Inside lay a familiar velvet box. Her grandmother's pearls. "How did you—" "I went to the police station the next day and told them it was a misunderstanding," Victoria explained. "I've kept them for you ever since. They're yours, as they should have been all along." Sophia lifted the box, feeling the weight of its history in her hands. "Thank you," she said simply. Outside in the hallway, Michael was waiting, concern etched on his face. "How was it?" Sophia held up the velvet box. "She gave me Grandma's pearls back." "That's unexpected," Michael said cautiously. "She apologized," Sophia told him, still processing the surreal conversation. Said she was wrong about everything. Michael raised an eyebrow. Do you believe her? I think I do, Sophia replied slowly. She's changed. Or maybe she's just finally showing who she always was beneath all that control. As they walked through the hospital corridors toward the exit, Sophia felt a curious lightness, as if a burden she'd carried for years had begun to lift. Not completely gone. There were too many wounds for that, but lighter. Are you going to see her again? Michael asked as they stepped outside into the spring sunshine. Yes, Sophia decided. On my terms, in my time. But, yes. He smiled, taking her hand. You're a better person than I am. No, she shook her head. Just a person who's learned that holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts her. That evening, back at the lake house, Sophia stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and pink. Michael worked inside, the rhythmic sound of his sanding drifting through the open windows as he finished their new dining table, a labor of love crafted from wood, reclaimed from the lake house's old dock. In her hand, she held her grandmother's pearls, their soft luster catching the fading light. Tomorrow, she would go back to her classroom, back to the life she'd chosen. In time, perhaps she would visit her mother again, take small steps toward a different kind of relationship than the one they'd had before. The path forward wasn't clear, but for the first time, Sophia felt truly free to choose it. Free from her mother's expectations, free from the need for her approval, free from the anger that had threatened to consume her. As the last rays of sun dipped below the horizon, Sophia fastened the pearl necklace around her throat, not as a symbol of family obligation or status, but as a reminder of her own journey, from the dutiful daughter who had climbed down a tree in desperation to the woman who stood firmly on her own ground. Michael joined her on the porch, wrapping his arms around her waist. You know, he said, when I saw you walking down that aisle in your simple dress, your hair a mess from that motorcycle ride, I thought you were the most beautiful bride I'd ever seen. Even with all the drama? Sophia laughed softly. Especially with all the drama, he assured her. It showed me exactly who you are. Someone who fights for what she believes in, no matter what. Sophia turned in his arms, the pearls gleaming softly against her skin in the twilight. I believe in us, she said simply. I always will. As night fell over the lake, bringing stars that reflected like diamonds on the water's surface, Sophia knew that the story of her wedding day would be one she'd tell for years to come, not as a tale of family betrayal, but as the moment she discovered her own strength, the day she chose love over fear, authenticity over appearances, and freedom over control. Victoria Hayes had tried to stop her daughter from attending her own wedding. What she hadn't counted on was that in doing so, she'd unleashed a courage in Sophia that nothing and no one could ever lock away again. If you enjoyed this emotional journey with Sophia and Michael, please show your support by giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel for more heartfelt stories. Did this story touch your heart? Type the word courage in the comments to let us know you listened all the way through. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need a reminder that standing up for love is always worth it. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thanks for the coffee and see you next time.